let's get this party started. Now, I did title this next one, The Court System in America. This may sound elementary to a lot of us, like we know the rungs of the court systems, but I had to add this because we are literally talking about the late 1800s version of the court systems in America, which is not the same as what we have right now. So let's go ahead and just get a look at what the court systems in America, the tiers of the court systems in America during the late 1800s.
Okay, so that was the end of the line for the Scots in state court. Once you reach the highest court in the state, there's nowhere else to appeal to. But that doesn't mean it's the end of possible judicial remedies. So the way the court system is set up in the United States is that it is two separate systems. A state system where there are many trial courts in a state, a court of appeals, and then a Supreme Court, though the way the courts are named differ in some states. For example, the lowest court in New York State is called the Supreme Court, and the highest court is called the Court of Appeals. So you appeal a case up from the Supreme Court to the appellate court, because I guess New York always has to be special in some way. Anyway, that state system is separate from the federal system. The federal system has district courts, then courts of appeals, and then it all appeals up to the Supreme Court of the United States. Because these are separate court systems, you can restart a case on the same issue in federal court after you've exhausted your state court options. But this is only available if you are suing based on federal law. Like, you can't go to the federal court system and be like, he trespassed on my lawn, because that's a state issue. That's a state law question between two people who live in the same state. The feds don't need to get involved. But if you're suing based on federal law, or you're suing someone from a different state about an issue that's worth over $75,000, then it can go before federal courts, because then it's between states and there's a lot of money involved, so it's worth it for the feds to get involved.
Okay, so that is just so nobody gets confused when we come, through as we watch the rest of these, and might as well, oh God. As a matter of fact, we're going to go ahead and jump into the verdict.
Anyway, so the reason why the Scots were able to bring this case in federal court was because at some point, historians have no clue how or when or why, the ownership of the Scots was transferred from Irene to her brother John Sandford, which is why the case eventually became Dred Scott v. Sandford. And John Sandford, he lived in New York. Different states. Feds can get involved now. You follow me? Great. So in district court, the Scots again claimed that they had gained freedom when living on free soil, and Sandford countered, most importantly, with the question, can a person who was of African descent, meaning they or their ancestors were brought to the United States to be enslaved, can someone like that sue in federal court at all? Because are they even citizens? At that point, the district court said the Scots could sue, that the fact of their ancestry didn't bar them from suing. However, the district court was like, you can sue, but your lawsuit, yeah, it sucks. You lose. Okay, so you know how I just explained about how in the federal court system you have district courts, then courts of appeal, then the Supreme Court? Well, those courts of appeal, they weren't created until 1891 as a means of lightening the Supreme Court's growing caseload. So at this point, it's 1854, you just have district courts and then right to the Supreme Court. So the Scots' final judicial remedy was to appeal that federal district court's decision that their lawsuit sucked up to the Supreme Court of the United States. At the Supreme Court, the Scots again argued that they had the right to sue and that Missouri's once free, always free precedent should be upheld. Sandford argued again that the Scots didn't have standing to sue, meaning they shouldn't be allowed to sue because enslaved people aren't citizens. And even if they did, the abolition of slavery made by Congress in the 1820 Missouri Compromise, which affected the territories that the Scots claimed made them free, yeah, that wasn't a valid thing for Congress to have done. Enslaved people are property, and Congress can't take away people's property like that.
Okay, so we heard these arguments yesterday. Let's just go through it again. The Scots argument is that at a point in time, they were in free states. They're using the law once free, always free in order to stop being slaves, for lack of a better term. Sandford is arguing 2 points now, I guess. One, they're not citizens in a way, so they can't even sue. Two, even if you were to quasi make them citizen enough to sue, Congress does not, the Constitution has said that you are not allowed to take property from anybody, regardless of where they are in a free state or a slave state. And at that time, slaves were property. So even if you was in a free state, you can't take my property away. So that's Sandford's argument. The more we get into it, the more disgusted I am. But it is what it is. Let's go ahead and get into the second part of the verdict, and then I'll let everybody speak, because the next video after that, Lord have mercy. So here's the second part of the verdict.
The final decision of the Supreme Court came down in 1857. 1857. Remember how this whole case started in 1846? Yeah, this has been going on for 11 years. And now it's 1857 and we're 4 years away from all-out civil fucking war over this very issue. So the court had a lot to say. 200 pages of things to say. I usually try to read everything for you guys before making these videos, but no. In this case was unique in that it was a 7-2 decision, but each of the 9 justices wrote their own opinions. Despite this, Chief Justice Taney's opinion is considered the majority opinion that is cited to today. And it's a damn doozy. Again, I didn't read the whole thing because holy shit, but it is clear from the decision that Taney was a staunch textualist, meaning he believed that the Constitution has to be interpreted based on the original understanding of the words at the time the Constitution was adopted. This is problematic for a whole host of reasons, not least of which being the Constitution is meant to be a living document that changes with the times. It was written in 1787, so it's old as dirt, and in the US we hold out the Constitution to be this sacred cow that's due complete and total reverence, but then the majority of the US has never actually read the Constitution, nor have we read the literal hundreds of years of judicial precedent interpreting that Constitution. In the US, we have the shortest written Constitution of any major government in the world. The shortest. The framers knew they couldn't answer every question that could ever come up, so they left things intentionally vague to allow for interpretation. Let me stop myself before this turns into more of a rant than it already is. As I was saying, Taney's opinion looked at the words citizen and we the people in the Constitution to determine whether those words applied to enslaved people of African descent at the time the Constitution was written. And he determined that there was no way this could be the case because most of the framers were enslavers in a society that didn't question slavery, which is ignoring the truth that there very much were abolitionists and disagreement over enslaving humans at the time the Constitution was written, and they clearly knew something was wrong with it considering they gave a hard deadline for the importation of people from Africa as part of the written Constitution. And Vermont had abolished slavery in 1777. There were plenty of facts he could have relied on to support the idea that formerly enslaved people should, at the very least, have the right to sue in court. This could have been a very narrow ruling about just that, but instead Taney made it a broad, sweeping ruling, likely due to outside pressures on the Supreme Court to make a determination once and for all about slavery.
Okay, so I'm gonna leave everybody else can talk. I already had my say. So far.
Some things never change. Some things never change. That's all I got for you, man. Because this is the same thing the Supreme Court does now. They've always done it throughout history. You can't go to an immoral thing expecting morality back. So I reject the entire thing. I literally just reject the entire thing. So Supreme Court, that's not my Supreme Court. That's the Supreme Court. You know what I'm saying? Constitution. Black folk been saying forever the Constitution was a piece of crap and it needs to be redone. No one ever listens to us anyway because they never have. And now all of a sudden, because the power dynamic or the level of favorability has shifted some, now you have the people of this same ilk who are now advocating for actually suspending the Constitution. So things never change. It's all about a power thing. And like I said, I reject the entire notion of property. Right? Now, we look at it as a historical thing. Well, back then they would consider what they considered us. I reject every last bit.
People.
Right. I reject the entirety because like even to entertain it is to validate it. Right. Like it was a bull crap
He
position.
already cussed.
When did I curse?
You said the effing word.
I don't think I did, but I did. I'm sorry. But anyway,
I didn't remember him saying that. Anyway.
But I reject that because it's all about you got to uncenter whiteness, right? The things that they were doing back then that was justified in their eyes, never justified in mine. So all of that is illegitimate. The court's illegitimate. The history on it is illegitimate. Like you can't go to the thief and then say, "Tell me about your life story on how to be a great businessman." What? So like I tell my children, never envy a thief, never trust a liar. You know what these people have done. Don't ever look to American society to tell you what is decent, what is moral, what is right, what is wrong. Don't do that. What does your heart tell you? And my heart tells me this is all garbage. And it just, If I had a time machine, I would go back straight up and I would murk almost everybody I could see. Straight up and down.
Can't blame you.
I don't have anything to lose.
It ain't about having nothing to lose. I don't even know what I would end up doing to the future because everything has an effect on you and all that. But I'll go back and I'd be murking. It's like people talk about what was it? I want to say it was the Nat Turner rebellion that almost happened, and they were like, they were gonna take out everybody, men, women, and children. It is horrible, and I'm like, nah, that's just fine with me because the people in that house were enslaving men, women, and children, right?
And take it out.
They were killing men, women, and children.
So, right? What are you saying?
So that's what I'm saying. Like people have to decide what for themselves, what is right and what's wrong. Stop going what everybody else is telling you. Stop going about what you think should be right or wrong. What does your heart tell you? And if your heart tells you to be aggressive towards people for no reason, then you need to check your heart. But but this right here, nah.
Oh, we all have an inner compass, and I'm start using it.
Yeah, is the people who they want power and privilege so much that, and I'm just be totally honest with you because Theus brought it up yesterday, but it is the truth. We've been for the longest time been calling it slavery, and rightfully so because it is slavery. But you know what we actually call it now? We call it human trafficking because that's what it was. That's all it literally is. If you can explain to me what's the difference after we just saw a video where they was leasing out slaves and you can borrow my slave and you can use it for a few minutes and okay, I'm done. So because my farm didn't work out, so I try to liquidate everything I had, including my slave. Tell me the difference between slavery and human trafficking.
Well, it's even worse.
And even if you try to put sexuality into it, nope. You still can't tell me the difference between slavery and human trafficking. It's the exact same. Ooh.
Not that. No, wait, whoa. Human trafficking, like when they take these poor people who are desperate for economic opportunity from South America and do horrible things to them and rob them blind and leave them for dead in the desert, and then just to smuggle them into the United States. That's horrible. It's a crime against nature. It's a crime against man. That's still just one aspect of slavery. You look at sex trafficking, where they rob you of your independence and they use you like a piece of meat for other people to get their pleasure from you with no regard for your humanity. That's still just one aspect of slavery. I mean, it's like you can look at almost any abomination you want to, and they were all just slices of what American chattel slavery was. Like, you had the sex trafficking, they were literally breeding us like animals. The way that you end up with a pit bull versus a Georgia bulldog versus a boxer, right? That's all from selective breeding. That's how you ended up with 6'6" versus big muscle frame versus, right? They bred us like animals, yo. You know what I'm saying? So it's that's why I won't let anybody compare us to anything else. I just won't let it happen, because our Holocaust, because I mean, I guess patent pending, only one group of people gets to use the term Holocaust, but our Holocaust lasted 300 years. You know what I'm saying? And it's only trailing out at this point 150 years later, 160 years later, right? 6 million people were murdered in the most grisly fashion imaginable, starved and everything else under the Nazi occupation. And we recognize that as a Holocaust. Those of us with some sense recognize that as a Holocaust. 100 million Africans died and were murdered over the course of slavery. Tell me that's not a Holocaust. Tell me that's not genocide. The indigenous people, I don't even know the numbers because nobody tell you. Right? But that went on for almost 400 years. Tell me that's not, well, we acknowledge that that's a genocide. We'll give that one genocide, but then we just try not to talk about it. Right? But the perpetrator every single time fits the very general description. And then they say, well, that's way back then. That's way back then. Oh, that's way back then. Okay. Well, let's look at Israel. Israel is doing genocide as we speak against the Palestinian people. I'm not putting their story one-to-one with us because, I mean, we, like Ice Cube said, we got too much issues over here. But just look at who's doing it. It's the European Jews who took over Israel, right? Your ass from Poland, now you in over here, and you go back and do the same atrocities that were done to you to another group of people. But this is today. And who's backing them? Good old Uncle Sam and the rest of the European powers, the colonial powers. So it's like everybody wants to say that's back there, that's way back here. But I'm like, no, it's a mindset. It's an ideology. It's a belief system. It's a superiority complex. It does not die with a person. So way back there is just telling you what they're doing right now.
Pretty much. Anna, you got anything? Nope. All right. But let you know, I've been trying to put off this next video for the longest time because Merc, pretty nice word. I like that word. It's a YouTube safe word to use. But I'm gonna play this video, and trust me when I say Merc was the first word that popped in my head. Let's go to get into Judge Tawney's decision.
And boy did he. The most infamous line from this opinion, and this is going to be really offensive, describes that at the time the Constitution was written, people of African descent were, and I quote, regarded as beings of an inferior order and altogether unfit to associate with the white race, either in social or political relations, and so far inferior that they had no rights which the white man was bound to respect, and that the Negro might justly and lawfully be reduced to slavery for his benefit. Tawney goes on to say that enslaved people were bought and and sold and treated as an ordinary article of merchandise in traffic whenever a profit could be made by it. And this opinion was at the time fixed and universal in the civilized portion of the white race. It was regarded as an axiom in morals as well as in politics, which no one thought of disputing or supposed to be open to dispute, and men in every grade and position in society daily and habitually acted upon it in their private pursuits as well as in matters of public concern without doubting for a moment the correctness of this opinion. And Taney could have stopped there and said, nope, not citizens, this case can't go forward. He didn't have to address the constitutional questions of whether enslaved people were property that governments can't take away, or whether Congress had the right to create free states out of the Missouri Compromise. He didn't have to get into that. He didn't have to get to the constitutional questions that were tearing the United States apart at the seams. But he was like, nah. Hold my beer. Taney was like, listen, enslaved people are property, and the Fifth Amendment protects against unlawful seizures of property. So any law that deprives an enslaver of his property was therefore unconstitutional. And he said these free states created by Congress through the Missouri Compromise, yeah, also not constitutional, because it goes beyond the powers given to Congress by the Constitution. And in making that decision, Taney soundly closed the door on the federal government's ability to step in on the subject of slavery, leaving it to individual states to determine, which basically set the states at odds with each other, increasing tensions between the North and South, and adding fuel to the fire of the brewing civil unrest, which erupted into civil war 4 years later.
Now, y'all gonna hear that and get mad, irritated, angry, rightfully so. We should. But bring it back towards the present time. Just because you said it doesn't mean it wasn't happening. You just saying the quiet part out loud. You, Black society right now gets mad when they hear people talk like that and say stuff out like that, and you're mad and you're up in arms. Why? Because he said it? Because the act that he is saying is still going on. Just because he said what it is that they're doing should not be the part that pisses you off. Him saying verbatim that the Negro is an inferior and it is for their benefit. We're doing them a favor, making them slaves. And the first, how dare he say that? What you so upset about? They was doing that anyway. So you feel better because he didn't say it out loud? What is the matter with you?
Well, I'll tell you what's wrong with it. And it took me a long time to get here, and I'm still wrestling with it as it comes up from time to time. Hey, Tracy. But the reason why people basically want to be asleep, they literally do. They want the natural way of just about anything in nature is path of least resistance. And if you believe that the obstacles against you are so severe, so massive, and so strong that you can't figure out how to affect change, you try to pretend that what's happening simply isn't happening. It's like a survivor's coping mechanism, right? You just try to take yourself somewhere else. And so you pretend it's not happening, or you pretend it's not as bad as it is. Because if you have to look at it, the laws of information say you only have three choices. You can accept it, reject it, or process it. So people get stuck in the reject piece because the other two are very difficult to deal with. And so ever so often, reality intrudes. And it intrudes and it pisses you off all over again because you haven't been looking at it all the time. You haven't been thinking about it. You haven't found your bearings. So every time somebody comes to you with Dred Scott, every time somebody comes to you with like Nat Turner, like we were talking about before, every time somebody brings up Malcolm Martin and the crew, you get mad all over again. You know, and that's why I think that happens, Marlon. I think it's not that they're simple or anything like that. It's they're either lazy or afraid or both. Um, I'm gonna lean more towards lazy or afraid because it's you just don't know what to do with it. So you get mad every single time. And what I ask for people to do is once stay in that, stay in it. You're mad, stay in it. Let that anger sit on you. I know it sounds like the dark side of the force. Let that anger sit on you. Let it draw you further in so that you start saying, what else was going on? And then you start picking up other books and other articles and different videos and talking to different people. And so you can get enough into it that the anger doesn't hurt as much anymore and the anger becomes fuel instead of becoming a suppressor. That's what I would say.
I'll give it to the ladies in a few minutes. I'm just for the first time. Well, not for the first time, because someone was that stupid. But I was gonna let everything, people, the little trolls, little ride out and everything. But I knew I would have had to make a decision on how much I was going to let through. And I think my thought process was I'm not going to allow misinformation to sit on our page. So two of them I got rid of this afternoon, as you know I ain't waking up in the morning on the weekend. This afternoon, um, and one who thank you for the backwards compliment, dude, whoever you are. You started off the whole conversation off with, and here you is spreading undocumented proof of everything that's, and I'm like, dude, there is no way none of what we're saying is undocumented. What you're saying is you don't want to read it, or even if you did, you don't want to believe it, but don't say it's undocumented. We got a history, 200 effing years. You don't think any of it was documented? But I do love your little backwards compliment. Y'all are you worked hard and became real famous, and this is how you use your power. Well, first of all, didn't know we was real famous. Did y'all know that? So appreciate it. I didn't know we was up there, but for the fact that one of the videos that's coming out tomorrow, so keep your eye out for is, and I remember the title because I wrote it, and it was, "We're not going to stop talking about Black history to make you feel better about yourself." That's not going to
Oh,
happen. All I got to do is not lie. That's all I got to do. I don't have to, have perfectly anything. I don't have to get upset and scream and yell and moan and everything else. And sometimes I do because some of this crap does piss me off. But we ain't got to lie about anything. We just got to tell the truth. And if the truth hurts you, tough. I can't even remember what the other person I banged. I can't remember. It was something of
well,
the same
well,
deal.
well, Marlon, the fact that you felt that those comments were at the point where they needed to be omitted or removed, that's like, why are we even talking about them here? You see what I'm saying? Like, why give them the air? You done took them off. You know what I'm saying? So it's like they deserve no validation, none.
Oh no,
You
it
got a
was
lot of people who support you and say a lot of great things. Talk about them. These people, I mean, these people are even at the point where you said, "Nah, you just too far out there. I can't. Nah, because you're more patient than me. So you got to go." At that point, I ain't gonna sit here and give you a homage.
yeah. I don't know. Maybe I feel better. I just wanted to use that part about saying we're famous. Like, okay. Yeah. Anyway, Tracy, Hannah, anything?
I got here too late, so I can't even offer comment.
All right.
But how's everybody doing?
We good. How you doing?
Good.
9 months. I got 9 months until football comes back.
Oh,
Y'all, what am I gonna do with myself?
don't care.
I do.
No,
Enroll in a course, start a garden, learn a new craft,
you're going to school.
read a book.
I know, but I done made preparations for that. I got that already planned.
I
No,
can't
Mm-hmm.
relate, so
no
Grace,
I'm
Sunday
gonna
game.
respectfully
I'm
decline
saying
it.
something about your preparation. And Mike Tyson was the one that made it, of all people. Mike Tyson made it famous.
Who of all people?
Everybody has a plan until they get hit in the mouth.
Very true.
So yeah, prepare all you want to. You got preparations and 9 months and everything. When them books start flying and them courses start flying, you could ask Foxy. She's doing hers online and she's over there burning the midnight oil trying to get papers out. So just saying, if you're into this school and you want to get them good grades and you want to be up there, them 9 months gonna fly by because you ain't even gonna be thinking about it.
I don't start till August. 1 month away from football.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
So
What else you got, dog?
I have the ending.
Fate continued to play a role in Dred Scott's life, however, because remember Irene, the widow of Emerson, the army doctor, the one that the Scotts originally sued to get their freedom? Yeah, well, she remarried a guy named Calvin Chaffee, a congressman from Massachusetts, who was a staunch abolitionist. And apparently he just didn't know that she claimed ownership over the Scotts. Anyway, he found out a couple months before the Supreme Court decision came down, probably because newspapers nationwide were like, hey, you know this insane Supreme Court case, Scott v. Sandford, that we're all waiting to see to determine the outcome of slavery in America? Yeah, well, Chaffee, that abolitionist congressman, his wife is the one who claims to own them. So Chaffee's pissed and embarrassed and transfers ownership of the Scotts to Taylor Blow back in Missouri. Again, remember the Blow family? They were the original enslavers of Dred Scott, who had spent a lot of time and money and used their connections to help his case for his freedom. Now that they were the rightful owners of the Scotts, they could begin the process of emancipating them. And on May 26, 1857, Dred and Harriet Scott were formally freed in St. Louis Circuit Court by that same judge, Alexander Hamilton. After obtaining his freedom, Dred Scott worked at a hotel in St. Louis, and Harriet worked as a laundress. Unfortunately, Dred Scott died of tuberculosis on September 17, 1858, just 18 months after obtaining his freedom. Harriet would live until 1876. Back in 2017, the podcast More Perfect, which if you haven't heard of it, is an excellent podcast all about constitutional law and the Supreme Court, I highly recommend. They did an episode called American Pendulum 2 about the Dred Scott case, and they covered a reconciliation summit that was held between the descendants of Dred and Harriet Scott and the descendants of Justice Taney, who wrote this opinion. It's a really interesting look at history and how we talk about it now and reconcile with it now, with a lot of mixed emotions and interesting discussions. I highly recommend.
Okay, so the only thing that I even take from the ending, which, well, two things now. One, once again, that perfect storm for justice. That's the only way, then and now, you happen to marry. Why did you about the smartest woman I know? So you decided that you have a slave and you go to marry somebody who is completely and utterly against slavery.
Yeah.
Also, you also going to be in a time when, as much as men don't have, blacks didn't have power. Women is the next step above with no power. So, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take your slave and give him to somebody else that I know that's going to free them. And there's nothing that you can do because you're a woman. I'm so glad we're at the end of this story, but I just really just feel like I'm glad that I made a decision to go do a more deeper dive into Black history instead of just putting the famous names up there and giving the same speeches and the same this, that, and the other and stuff like that. Now, I don't know what I'm going to do next year because, I did not know that systemic racism was going to take up the majority of the month. But it did. And I'm
So have
happy.
to be more disciplined next year.
You're joking. So funny. That's never going to happen. But I appreciate the I appreciate everybody on here. This was tougher than it was last year getting through this. But I'm glad that we did it. I have there's no issue with me of doing it. But go ahead, Diaz.
No, I was gonna say. I mean, I think they did a good job. Thank you, Anna, for bringing up some of the ideas. And I mean, I think this is a much better way of doing it than it's traditionally done, right? So I wouldn't have any objections to doing pretty much the same thing next year. Just pick a different topic or person or group. Just keep it moving. But yeah, what I would say though from the video we were just watching, what I take away from it is stop looking to the court system for justice because that's not where justice lives. You know what I'm saying? So in the battle for your humanity, there is no such thing as a decision of consensus. Okay, you are a person. You are free. You are equal. Like you were born that way. There are things that are taking it from you. So the court is not the place to figure out who's human. That's not subject to the courts. So there are things that need to be done in the courts, and there's things that need to be done in the streets, and that's what I take from it. Now, also with any movement, there's multiple facets and multiple angles. Uh, you need somebody who's going to fight in the courts because the Dred Scott decision helps move the country towards a particular direction, not because of the decisions, but because of the decisions, right? So you have that. So to explain, you have the decisions that were fighting against his humanity and his family's humanity and freedom. Those decisions really don't mean anything. But those very same decisions spark the outrage over here to give energy to continue to fight on a different level. So that's what I mean, right? The decisions themselves in the courts, meh. But because of those very same decisions, other actions can take place. And that's how basically any major movement works. You got those who are fighting in the courts, those who are fighting in the streets, those who are fighting in the businesses, and it's all moving in the same direction. And you need all of them to make it happen.
All right. Anna, Tracy.
Anna, you go first.
Yay that he got free. I'm happy that there was some tiny little good part of the story. But my question is now, since legally in 1857, any Black person, didn't matter if you were a freedman from the North, didn't matter if you were enslaved, and you could not be considered a citizen. Anything ever say that was wrong.
So nothing said it directly, but the 13th Amendment abolished chattel slavery as a course of bondage. And then the 14th Amendment gave birthright citizenship. So it was like, that's how they overturned the Dred Scott decision, really, the 13th and 14th Amendment. But that's the closest it came. Like, America is not very good at saying, we were wrong.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
Oops.
yeah, I think there was some president, I don't even know which one of the Bushes, maybe it was Clinton, I don't know. But one of them apologized for slavery in some offhanded, sideways kind of way. But, you know, you're not doing restitution, so I'm really not really understanding what the value of that apology is. We kind of know it was wrong. That's why they passed the amendments.
So what I see is there are still all kind of legal decisions that are saying you are not citizens. The voting has to be re-upped every 25 years. Like,
oh, it's very clear. Yeah, we are extended guests.
wow.
Right? We are not afforded equal protection under the law. We know it, we see it.
Right.
It's also part of the trauma that we all live with each and every day.
Mm-hmm.
We're not afforded equal representation in history. That's why we have to have a separate track, you know. That's why we have to have a month, right? Because we're still one off. We are not equal representation in corporate America or business America because we're denied access because they won't do reparations because you can't give us back time. Can't give us that. But you could make it so we could start our own factories and start our own machines of industry. But to do that, we would need a lot of money, and that's part of reparations. So since you won't do that, we are forced to try to make our ways within established culture. So now maybe you'll give us a job in your businesses. And I think that's one of the ways we got off track in a slightly different discussion. But we're all now you got people fighting about, you know, what's the diversity, equity, DEI, and stuff like that, because you won't let us own the company. We have to fight you to be able to work in yours. All right. So that's a one. Our churches, right? About the only thing you can get a loan for as a small business person of size is a church. But even then, you got black churches and you got white churches. You got some multiracial?
Multi-denominational.
No, not that one. I mean, like, yeah, multiple ethnic groups. Multiple ethnic groups is what I'm getting at. Multiracial, I think, is one of the term. You got some of those churches, but they're disproportionately still ran by, you know, a white pastor, but whatever on that. But we're still split there. There is a one-off version for everything for black versus our university system. We don't have equal endowments because we've been deprived from actually having the ability to create the wealth to give the endowments back to our schools, and the U.S. government refuses to step in the gap for that. So it's always there, right? A black man gets murdered by a police officer, and automatically, well, what happened before the video started? But a bunch of white people go and attack the Capitol Hill and cause the death of 2 police officers and injure 140 more. And it's, well, bad things happen. Let's move on. So you can pass a law, but a law doesn't mean anything if you aren't willing to enforce it. And that has historical legs. When they did Brown v. Board of Education, passed that, I think, in 54, we're in the 60s, still desegregated. 90s, still segregated. 90s, still segregated. You had schools in the 2000s having their first interracial proms, right? So what's the point of having a law if you're not going to enforce it? So yeah, like you were saying, yeah, there's a lot of things out there. Like, who was it who was talking? I think it was on the videos Marlon showed, or maybe I saw it on another video, where like, there are no laws on the books that are expressly race related.
Yeah, that was mine, and it was the fact that it has nothing to do with law; it's the enforcement of the law.
Because that's where you end up with de jure and de facto. And so a lot of the de jure rules have been removed, or they've been shrouded with new language. But the de facto, yeah, that stuff is still hanging in there loud and proud.
I will leave the last word up to Tracy or Anna. Well, Tracy, because Tracy haven't said anything.
This country makes me sick.
Yeah.
Sick, 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 sick. I can't think of nothing else I can say. I am so sick and tired of slavery was a long time ago and da 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 da. You know, there was a funny little sketch that I saw, either it was on TikTok, it was probably Instagram because I don't go to TikTok that much. And it said, how can, like, they were life live without black inventions.
Mm-hmm.
And they tried to live a day without anything that a black person actually invented.
So no furnace?
They couldn't do it. Do you know I was in my 40s by the time I learned a black person invented, oh shoot, I want to say the refrigerator so bad. It was one of those.
The traffic light.
The traffic light, thank you. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm 40, I'm in my 40s and I'm learning this. I should have learned that in school. I should have learned that Dr. Drew, I can't think of that was his last name. He was the first doctor that did a blood transfer. Yeah, open heart surgery. We don't learn these things, and it's by design. The whole thing is by design. You got a whole state that wants to make you think that Rosa Parks sat on the bus because her feet were tired. Crapola it was. If the system doesn't want to teach us our history, we better be in place to teach our children and ourselves. We got a lot of history that we need to learn. Because if I'm in my 40s and I'm just now knowing that a black person invented the traffic light, what the tarnation? What in the world is happening to this country? Second point. Can we get rid of the Supreme Court? I'm sorry, I just got to go on this little tangent because can I say the whole thing though, please? Because all these rights that we fought for, like I was back there fighting, all the rights that my ancestors fought for, and the courts are just chipping them away. Put the voting booth, put it way out 50, 60 miles away from where somebody lives. Sure, throw it away. They don't need to vote. What do they need to vote for? Sure, make them get ID and they may be homeless. Hey, it doesn't even matter. You have to have an address to vote, but if they don't have an address, they can't vote. Sure, if you live in Florida, and the citizens vote that, hey, if you're in prison, you can vote. And the governor says, I don't know what y'all voted on. They're still not voting. America, you make me sick. I am so... I don't even know what to say anymore. I don't know where I should fight first. Because if you just think I'm going to just sit back and just let you just kind of squash over black history, wrong. I'm going to make sure that my nieces know, my nephews know, my cousins know, everybody knows. And that's all I'll say. Now, please, you can say, yes, stay. The Supreme Court should stay.
No, I would. I mean, I don't say it like that. But I'll say that the problem with the Supreme Court, it's easy to look at the structures and refuse to look at each other. I need us to start looking at our neighbors. I need to start looking at the people that you go in the grocery store with. I need to start looking at people sitting next to you in church. I need you to start looking at, see what I'm saying? Like, these are the people voting for this mess that puts these particular people in place. We can blame the structures all we want, but those are like 4 or 5 steps removed from us, which makes it easier to say, oh, well, I can't do nothing about that. So that's why you end up with people blaming Joe Biden for stuff that is really Congress or stuff that is really the state legislature or stuff that, you know what I'm saying? Like, because it's so far away that, okay, well, we'll just pick the boss, right? Even though he's not. But we need to look at each other, right? And then also look at these so-called parties, because the parties are corporations that have zero interest in actual people. I remember, I don't think I posted this. I posted it in that chat, Marlon, where I was like, we are in a situation where the Democratic Party says it has to protect the country by defending democracy. And in order to do so, it must deny democracy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
in order for Biden to protect democracy, we have to suspend democracy so no one can contend against him while he goes out to go fight for democracy. And then you have the Republican Party who wants to get rid of democracy, but will use democracy to get there. So, like, the Republican representatives, as horrible as they are actually doing what their voters tell them to do.
Yep.
They're actually doing what their voters say to go do. Democracy. And then they go out there and do something horrible to try to get rid of democracy. That's a problem. The Democrats on the other side are like, don't really like the democracy part for saying who's in charge. But we're gonna protect it though. It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. But if we had actual functioning, real, I'm gonna ignore the Republicans for a second, Democratic Party, then they would have already expanded the court or reorganized it. Or made so much noise trying to get it done that it became a front and center situation. We have had Alito and Thomas blasted for rank corruption.
Yep.
And the Democrats have been largely quiet. Right? Least they could do is make noise and say, you know what?
Hey, that's stupid.
They've got nine Supreme Court justices. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna expand the court to 15. But we're gonna keep 9 who sit at any given time. So that means it's a randomized drawing every time it comes down, and it's going to pick a random 9 out of the 15.
But
the only one who will be
you know who's against that?
The Democrats.
No, yes. I'm like, y'all got to be the dumbest party I have ever heard. Now, you say what you want about third parties, but you
do realize I was sitting over here like really quiet when you were saying that, because I was like, didn't the Democrats say they didn't want to do that? So
they don't want to do anything. The Democrats don't want to do anything because they make money. They're basically corrupt mercenaries. They just want to get paid. The Republicans are ideologues who want to destroy everything and send everybody back 50 years. So they're not close comparisons. The Republicans are obviously measurably much worse, but the Democrats are ineffective, lazy, and sorry, right? So thank you for not hitting the gas on the bus headed towards the wall. The Republicans are like leaning into the gas pedal, trying to get the bus to go as fast as it can. Thank you for not being that, Democrats. But I'd just be nice if you would reduce speed, turn on your blinker, and make your way over to another lane.
Something that's gonna benefit you. Nope, we're gonna be against it.
Right. So it's a darn if you do, darn if you don't type of thing. But it's not. I do reject the thing that when they say Republicans, Democrats are just as bad, because they're not. They're not close. But there's a problem here. And so what are we going to do about it? Are we just going to complain about it? Or are we going to start organizing amongst each other and actually start to move things? Because you got to be able to buy you some politicians. That's what you got to do. Let's just be real about it. You got to be able to buy you some politicians.
Anna, last word.
There's not really a whole lot to.
Joe Manchin didn't even want $2,000 stimulus check in the middle of the pandemic, right when the Democrats took power in 2021. He definitely was never going to make any sort of structural changes to the institution.
part that he said that if people get stimulus checks, they're just going to go out and buy drugs.
Yeah, because
That's
see, that's the thing.
Twitter.
Yep.
Like,
Joe man, see, that's the thing. Just because somebody's rocking the jersey, it doesn't mean that they're really on the team. All right, Joe Manchin is a Dixiecrat. He's a Republican in a Democratic uniform. That's all Manchin is. So the Democrats are playing a different type of game. They're playing a corporatist game, and that's why Manchin is there. It's like it's better for him to be here than over there, because then at least he votes on our side, even though he gives us a hard time every time it's time to vote, right? But yeah, Manchin doesn't want his people. He's one of the richest men in his entire state.
Yeah.
And he doesn't think anybody else deserves to have anything because everybody else isn't. They haven't proven to him that they're smart enough to manage the money.
And will straight up tell you, oh, I got plenty of black friends. It ain't but 5 black people in the whole state of West Virginia. Maybe 6. Maybe.
Well, it's funny when they say they got black friends, the ones who are like him. They're the same black friends that everyone like you has. Like there's this pool of 20 black people, and they're all y'all friends.
Larry Elder, Tim Scott.
But let me push back on that, Diaz. Let me push back on that just a little bit, because it's real funny when they say, I got 5 friends. If you really push them,
they can't name them.
What it starts coming out to, it goes from friends to acquaintances. Then that falls from acquaintance to I know of them, and they know.
Well, I think it's unfair anyway.
It's like
that's an unfair question.
Okay, I wave to my neighbor across the street.
Yeah, it's an unfair question, man. Really, what they're saying is I don't go around saying the N-word. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, just say that.
But I think it's an unfair question anyway to say, do you have any black friends? Which is why no one ever asks that question.
No, he's the one that offers it. Nobody
they just volunteer that I have black friends.
He volunteered it. In case in point, notice how he always runs up on Raphael Warnock. Anybody watch it and tell me I ain't the only one thinking what I'm thinking. I'm like, oh, you done found a black. You trying to find somebody black. You just trying.
Yeah, because he's not. That's just it. Like, and that's why I'm saying it's not even a fair thing because, I mean, so what if you? Who really has a lot of friends? When you grown, you probably got 5 friends anyway. So I don't care if you have any black friends or any Latino friends, or I don't care because I can't expect that of you. Do whatever. Empathy should not require you to be directly tied to somebody to care about.